How many of these HLFs have you been to so far?
4 out of 5.
Which one did you miss?
Number 2.
Okay. So that's a good place to start, actually. What differences have you seen between the first time and now?
I think the addition of the Lindau lectures, which I think happened in the 3rd, was a major contribution because it brings a gifted expositor of a totally different field. And today's was a good example because the scope was immense. He started with the very beginning of medicine with willow bark in Egypt and brought it out to the future of what he calls the 3rd revolution. So it would be worth coming to the conference for nothing else except the Lindau lecture even. The biggest attraction is, for me, getting the chance to really talk with the other laureates. The young researchers are interesting, but not very many of them are in my field. And so it is the opportunity to interact with all these first-class minds that I find exciting. Yeah.
The questions that are on my list of questions, a lot have to do with mentorship, and it sounds like, in a sense, you still consider yourself mentored by other laureates.
Well, I learn a lot from them, yes. I wouldn't say it changes how I practice the profession much, yeah.
So who were your big mentors?
Oh, Howard Aiken, who built the first American, who was the architect of the first American computer, the Harvard IBM Mark I, was my dissertation advisor. Before that, I had a superb advisor in physics with whom I had a course each of the 4 years. I was at Duke, and that was Harold Lewis. He was an important mentor. The most important mentor has been my father, who had a PhD in biochemistry and then went into medicine and practiced as a physician for most of his career. And if he didn't know everything, he knew the answers to almost all our questions. So
this is the fifth HLF.
You're right.
And let's talk about 5-year periods, like the 5 years between when you met Howard Aiken, was it?
Yes.
Howard Aiken, and 5 years later. How did you change during that time? And what years were those?
They were 53 to 50, would be 53 to 58. I finished my PhD in 56 and went and joined IBM on the world's fastest supercomputer project at this stretch. And so that was when I had been interested in computers from age 13, when the first one appeared on the scene. Now, Zuse's work was prior to that, but we didn't know about it because it was behind the Hitler curtain. And so I had fallen in with fascination at 13, but then to actually get a chance to study computer science under one of the real pioneers made a professional. So that's what happened that 5 years, is I became a professional computer scientist.
It's like a very busy 5 years.
Very busy 5 years, yeah.
So some of these young researchers, of course you talk with a lot of them over the time. What sort of things do you think, do you hope that they'll accomplish in the next 5 years, particularly in your field?
Well, I've been working most recently in the field of virtual reality, and there's a trend going on of moving towards augmented reality, in which you see the real world and the virtual world superimposed. The Pokemon game is a crystal clear example. We still don't know what this is good for, and I would say one of the most important things I hope they will accomplish in the next 5 years is finding really important applications that benefit people, not just games for fun, but yeah.
How would you, this is going a little bit off topic, but how would you distinguish the augmented reality movement from how you originally envisioned virtual reality?
I have worked principally in applications in training, and as soon as you start dealing with a serious problem there, you need augmented reality. So in our laboratory, we've worked on that for many years. Suppose you're trying to train a 4-person emergency team. You have to have some real tools. You have to have some real patient dummies, all right? And you have to see those, and you have to see your colleagues. But meanwhile, you've got an angry crowd around that you don't want to generate. You want that to be virtual. They have to look real, sound real, move real to be convincing if I'm going to be trained, because I'm not training me in a peace and quiet is not going to solve the problem on the emergency scene. So, and if it's not an angry crowd, it's a deeply concerned crowd, all right? And one that's free to coach you on what to do.
So many of these researchers are early 20s mostly?
Yes.
What do you think about that period? What would you say to, say, a 23-year-old researcher for them to do over the 5-year period before they're 28?
Pick big problems, even if you make slow progress.
Why is that?
Well, I think it's better to tackle a big problem and fail than to tackle a little problem and succeed. It may not be as good for your career, but it's much better for your education.
Now, when you say pick big problems, that sort of brings to mind the split between the scientist who works in isolation and the one who works on a team.
Well, I'm an engineer. I'm not a scientist, all right?
Okay.
And engineering is inherently a team activity. But teams have leaders, and the leaders are the people who have the vision for what the team should be doing. And that should be the ambition of these young researchers, is to get with a team that has a leader they will learn a lot from, and to become a team leader, even a sub-team, all right, to learn how to get a team to work together. So the hardest problems in team engineering are all the people problems, not the technical problems. And so learning those skills is done from experience. Mentoring helps. When you get into real deep trouble, you want to talk to somebody who's older and has been in deep trouble himself and says, here's how you solve it. And one of the characteristics that I find in engineering is that people have different opinions about what ought to be done, and those opinions are very strong, and they're tied up with personalities. And so the whole question of how you reconcile real valid differences that depend upon valued judgments and depend upon technical judgments is a key skill. And I would say that's more important to acquire than the number of papers.
This actually comes back, it seems to me, to the written work you're most famous for, the Mythical Man month.
Well, it's still being used in classes, and that was 1975, so we're 50 years later. No, 40 years later. And the reason is because it's about people and not really about technical, not principally about technical subjects. And the people haven't changed much. Actually,
This was the next thing I was going to ask about how your field has changed, but since you're talking about sort of the topic versus the people skills, do you think that that's changed since?
No. I mean, look, why do we read Homer? Why do we read the Bible? Why is it relevant? Because it's about people, and the people haven't changed. Achilles still sulks in his tent on engineering projects too. How has the field changed? Well, the the first supercomputer I worked on was the world's fastest. We made 9 of them. They went to atomic energy commissions of Britain, England, and France, and weather bureaus. We sold them for $10 million a piece. They were 5 feet high, 5 feet deep, 15 feet long. And this machine I hold in my hand has much faster processor, much bigger memory, more input-output devices, and a richer collection of software, and cost $600.
Do you think that people have gotten any better with people? Well, I guess the thing is...
Well, the trouble is, a new generation comes over the hill every 25 years, and so you start over in civilizing them. Here come the barbarians, all right? So big, but they're barbarians, and they have to be civilized. Now, we've learned a lot. One of the things I think is important in the last 10 years is we've learned a lot more about active teaching and the importance of involving the students much more deeply. So we've learned not to rely principally on lectures. The function of the teacher is not to convey information nowadays. There are many better ways to do that. The function of the teacher is to design experiences will guide the students in learning. Design the experiences the students have, but from which they'll learn. So it's a design problem.
Actually, that covers all of the high points. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, really, regarding the forum or anything?
Well, appreciation for the way the forum was founded, the vision, the endowment, the decision to continue, and the superb way it's run. I mean, really beautifully organized and carried out. Yeah.
I'm sure they'll appreciate
that. I mean, that's just very professionally superb, yeah.